Geocachomaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Well, welcome to the GeoGearHeads. On this weekly podcast, we talk about geocaching, and geolocation games. Tonight, we're talking about logging and other forest-based economic industries.
Whoa. We weren't able to get Paul Bunyan on, so we're not talking about that kind of logging tonight.
Oh.
We're going to be talking about the logging for geocache finding and such.
I have no idea that.
Oh, okay. You don't bother logging your finds?
No, I gave up on that.
Okay. Well, we decided to have an expert logger on with us tonight, and that is Shermanator18. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. Now, we probably want to start off this logging show with the Markdown stuff all over again, now that it's actually live, because the last couple times we talked about it, it wasn't live yet. And Markdown, for anyone who's missed that whole conversation, is the new formatting in your geocaching.com logs. It used to be that you could use HTML or BB code. Now you can't use any of those. You can only
Not since
use
the new Star Wars came
Markdown.
out. They don't let anything but go out with BB on it anymore. It's crazy.
Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Totally off subject. I saw a BB-8 helmet for kids today with the little antenna and everything, bicycle helmet, and I'm like, I think I might need to get that.
You almost bought it for yourself.
I don't think it will fit on myself, but I was thinking of it for Renee. Anyway, so there is a WYSIWYG editor in the online logging, so if you want to go online, you can get all of that stuff handy, but of course it's not in any of the apps or anything as of this recording.
It's in Cachely.
Well, it supports it, but it doesn't have a WYSIWYG.
Right.
You're right. You're right.
Right.
WYSIWYG. Sorry,
Right. So
that.
there's no references or anything like that, but at least the apps are starting to support the Markdown logs, so you'll actually see what you're supposed to see. But they also have in that online logging tool a nice reference so that you can learn these codes and reference what they're going to do, and it shows you how they're handling. Because one of the problems with Markdown is it's not handled the same way on all platforms. And geocaching.com omitted a lot of the support. So you can't do things like the images in the logs. There's no support for color in Markdown, period, so that's annoying and is going to drive a lot of people crazy. But quite frankly, I think that might be better because you're not going to get as many weird things in logs, like people trying to make flags.
Yay.
Yeah.
Boo, text art.
I hate those.
Yeah, it's all fun and games until you have to start scrolling down through those logs trying to find some information and find a clue, and it's like, okay, why do I have 6 screens of junk here?
Exactly.
And it never seems to flow right anyway when the final logs. Anyway, so you don't have any size either, unless you do it by headers. And this is where things get a little bit screwy, because they have header 1, 2, and 3, which, standard HTML headers. But the way that they've got it set up on their site, on geocaching.com with their CSS, is their definitions is header 0 or header 1 rather is your standard big and bold. Header 2 is just big, not bold. Header 3 is centered in green.
That's
So
really
you do
weird.
have some color.
Yeah. So that's the only color that you get to have. Well, that's not entirely true, because if you quote the text, which we'll talk about later, it turns green. And if it's a hyperlink, then it's the hyperlink colors. So to do the headers, it's the pound or hashtag, whichever you want to call it, in front of and behind whatever you're trying to put on there, and that has to be its own line. So you do, the hashtag space header space hashtag to close it, and that's its own line. Period. So if you want hashtag or the header 1, it's 1. If you want header 2, it's 2 of the pound or hashtag signs, and then 3 is just 3, and that's it. No 4, no 5, nothing else. But they
Isn't that enough? You have to use 6 hashtags. Have you found the hashtags on your mobile device's keyboard? It's usually on the second symbol screen.
Yeah, but
Yep.
this is the nice thing is once you've built some of this stuff into the templates,
There you go.
or you can set up something else that we'll talk about a little later, is you can set up shortcuts on Android and on iOS so that you can do weird .sig. Anytime you type .sig, it's going to go and put in your signature file, which has all of this stuff in it. So there's some ways that you can do it even if your app doesn't support having it. But getting back to the formatting, if you want to do italic text, it's asterisk, the text, asterisk, no spaces. You can have spaces in between, so multiple words, but you have to have the asterisk right next to it. If you have a space, it's going to render the asterisk. It's not going to turn that word or text italicized. If you want bold, it's 2 asterisks in front and in back. And if you want bold and italics, it's just 3. To do a quote, you put a greater than sign in a space, and then it's going to do an indent and quote the text, and that's going to be centered. Then hypertext, which is what I like to do, and we'll talk about one of the ways that I like to do it is actually put a link to whomever I'm caching with at that time, so that you can go, hey, I'm caching with Bad Cop, and you could click on that link in the log and go right to Bad Cop's profile and see what he's done and see if he's lazy and not log the cache. But that is...
Hey, your words hurt.
No, they don't.
Okay, it's
You're wrong.
truthful.
But you do the left bracket, whatever you want the link to be in the the text of the link to be, and then the right bracket, no spaces between any of these again, open parentheses, the link itself, and then close parenthesis. And that will get you your hyperlink. So that's how you do links to other caches, to travel bugs. You can use the cord.info, do your links to all that kind of stuff, which is really nice as well, especially when you're doing like travel bug tours. I've seen people create their nice little template. I'm taking all of these travel bugs to these different places, and you link to the stuff that way. Now, something that a lot of people are going to want for their signatures is that horizontal rule. So you put, a lot of people will put their text and then the horizontal rule, that line, and then they'll put the information, this was my fine number, blah, blah, blah. Well, the horizontal rules is just 3 dashes on a line by itself. That's it. So that's really about all I want to mention in there. They do also have the unordered list and the ordered list, so that's your bullets and your numbered lists. But I don't think that's worth getting into on this conversation. If you want that information, go check it out. It's there on the reference on the website. And if I can figure out how to get to the graphic that they're doing as the overlay, I'll link to that graphic in the show notes. But I haven't had a chance to dig into the code and see if I could get that yet. But now you've got the information that you can go and change your templates, set up your templates, and do your signatures, your shortcuts on the phone if that's what you want to do. Now, Shermanator18, I know that you're playing with the Cachely templates, but have you ever played with doing any of the shortcuts in the phone?
I didn't even actually think about that until you just brought it up just now. So that I might have to look into that now. That might be easier.
Yeah, there are some tools that will actually make it easier than just using the built-in stuff on the operating systems.
Mm-hmm.
But both Android and iOS do support it. Chris, I think you've played with that a little bit, haven't you?
I have. More than that, I tend to just copy and paste. But yeah, that's a quick and easy thing to do on the phone itself. I mean, I have shortcuts for I don't like to type all the words of the bad cop. It's 9 letters and 2 spaces. So if I put in capital TBC, it changes it for me.
Right, and that's really what is nice about using those shortcuts in the phone. I have my email address set up as just DW4, and whenever it sees that, it spells it out to the full email address, because that way I can do it on any form on a website. It's like there's a bunch of that kind of stuff that's really nice and easy to use just for that kind of stuff. But for the bigger text, and you can use it to do bigger text as well. In most cases, you can also use it for like emojis and stuff if you want to do that. But you can go and do big blocks of text and then just go back in and change it. But for that kind of stuff, what I had been doing for like Wallaby is creating different notes that I could copy and paste the whole thing, and then copy out of Evernote and paste it into the text fields. But I stopped doing that with Evernote because Evernote has gotten to be so incredibly slow and heavy that it's not really worth it anymore.
Nevernote?
Yeah, pretty much. So I know a lot of people who are doing that with Google Keep, and it's the same kind of thing there. So there's a bunch of ways that you can do that, and a lot of people I know will do just copy paste, and then if you're doing a whole series of caches and it's going to be pretty much the same thing across the board, you just copy it and then you keep pasting, and it's quick and easy. And that that's going to be a lot faster than if you have to type out TBC, because then you just do paste. So some things to play with, to get the logs in there. What do you say we get to some of the emails that we got, though? Chris, you want to start off with this first one?
Sure. We got an email from L. Willette. I assume that's how you pronounce it. They say, I would love to get some input on logging for power trails. I'm planning a trip this summer to Nevada, and I'm assuming the ET Highway, but there could be something else in Nevada. And I have an opportunity to log a large number of caches. I've seen rubber stamps used on logs before, which would definitely speed up the process. Many stamped logs aren't dated, though. Is this okay? How do you feel about these, and do you have any suggestions or resources for buying one?
All right, so I'll start with my thoughts on the rubber stamp, and I already replied to them as well. The rubber stamps generally do not work well for the power runs. They're great for regular caching. I love having the rubber stamp, especially if I'm going to do things like letterboxes. But what I did with with one of my stamps, actually I think more than one, is I had a little date area in the stamp so that I could stamp it and then just hand date it. And that's nice, but when you're on these power runs, usually you're dealing with micro logs, and those stamps just don't work. Not to mention, you're going to have a really tough time. It's going to take you more time to get a good impression out of that stamp than just writing down some initials. Yeah. So writing the initials of your team works really well. The trick that I usually see people do for actually logging in the field like that is you can get really, really tiny stickers, just like your Avery stickers for, like, it used to be called slides, but they have some other ones now for labeling smaller objects. And the last time I did one of these runs, I put the date on there, the team name, that kind of stuff, but I only used half of the label, and then I took an X-Acto knife and sliced it in half so it was even smaller and easier to stick on those tiny little logs.
Good idea.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's a good idea.
I did a cache today, and it was a brand new log. Well, I was the second to sign it, but somebody had done a sticker, or a stamp, above it, and I have no idea when they found it. Now, I could go online and look at their log, but, there's nothing on there. It's just a stamp saying they found it. Yeah. Not a big deal.
Well, especially if you're FDF, you need to have that date on there, preferably a time as well. But there's no reason, if you don't have a spot in the stamp, that you can't just date it right above it, or on the side. A lot of times when you get into like the events and stuff, you'll find that people aren't really dating it anyway, because you have one person who starts the log, and then everyone coming after it that day is going to be the same day anyway. So why waste the extra time?
Pages are the same day.
Exactly. So I don't recommend rubber stamps for power caching. The stickers are the best solution that I've heard and used. One of the nice things is if you have like two people who are actually running and finding the caches, where if you're not doing the exchange like the power trails like the ET Highway, you go and you grab like 2 or 3 extra containers at the beginning of the run, and then you're swapping containers and someone's in the back seat just stamping or writing. If you're not doing that and you have two people though out, hunting the caches, you have one person who does nothing but stick the sticker on the log. The other person holds it out. It goes really fast. Yeah. So that is my best recommendation for that.
Now, Daryl, what about stamps, though? Do you prefer the self-inking stamp, or would you rather carry a stamp pad, an ink pad, along with you?
I'm kind of mixed feelings on that. For the letter boxes, I prefer to have the pad on the side, because the letter boxes usually don't have their own ink pad. You have to have your own ink pad if you're going to be doing the letter boxes. But for the caching portion of it, not for the letter boxes, but for just the regular caches, I really like to have the self-inking ones. The ones I like, though, because you can get a couple of different types of them, and the ones I like are the ones that have the stamp pad in the base, not where it's the flip-arounds, because the flip-arounds I've had more problems.
Yeah, I found the self-inking ones, they're harder to line up. Because you've got a frame nice around that stamp. Right. If you've got for lack of a better term, if you've got a naked stamp and you're putting it on an ink pad, you can line that up nicely on the log and be done.
Right. Well, then it's the two different types. There's the like the Proto 2000 type, where it's the ink pad is up above and then it has to flip the whole thing around, and that's where you have those bigger frames. But there's also some that are nice little flip them open, and where you have the stamp pad and then the ink pad and then the stamp itself that are pressed together, and when you open it up, then you have just the stamp pad itself. So that makes it a lot easier, and I tend to get better impressions because you see exactly where the stamp pad is, and you can get that all right.
Yeah, I have one that flips around, whatever you want to call it, and I have trouble lining it up. I can't really tell where the top of my name's going to be, so I end up having stamping it, and then I have this big space where I wasted all this space on the log sheet.
Yeah. Now, the one exception to that, in my experience, has been I've got these really tiny circle ones that are the, press and inks and everything, stamp pads for the Motor City Cache Machine, the group caching name, but it's a circle where the whole stamp is probably less than half an inch. And so it's really tiny to begin with. It takes up the entire surface of the stamp, so it's just, nice, quick, easy, one shot done. And part of the why that one works so well is it is so small that you can stamp it just on the back of your hand and get a good impression.
How does that help in the log, though? If you're stamping it on the back of your hand.
Oh, no.
Sorry, yes. I couldn't resist.
You got me totally confused there.
I was like, what? What is he talking about?
So you can't cache with us until you have the stamp on the back of your hand. It's your pass into our caching group. So if you don't have that stamp, you're not in the log. Okay.
Oh.
All right, so Doglius Cache actually did a couple of questions via Google+. And we'll start off with, I find caches in the winter that are frozen shut, or the log scroll is wet and frozen solid. If I'm near my car, I may take the cache to the car and warm it up and dry the log roll. If I can't do that, I will not do damage by trying to sign the log. I do then log the cache online and say I didn't sign it because it's frozen. Is that a questionable practice? Only one cache owner had a problem with it and had me describe where I found the cache, which was okay, whatever the cache owner wants, if they care.
Well, I understand, and in our patron hangout this week, I presented a situation very similar to that. I found a cache, and I couldn't get it open. I had a Leatherman with me, but I was afraid if I cranked the lid hard enough, I would crack the container. So I chose to take a picture of myself with the actual inner container and log sheet, but I didn't sign it for fear that I would crack the container and allow water to get into the log. So that that's one of those things that I come up with, and I say, well, did I actually find it? Because I didn't sign a log. I'm pretty much a rule follower, so that's a hard one for me.
That's funny. I actually found a cache about a month ago. It was still cold here because we get a lot of freezing up here in New York. But it was like in a signpost. Like the signpost is like a U, and it was like stuck in that little nook there, and it was frozen. I couldn't get it out. I didn't have anything to get it out or anything. So I just posted a note. I didn't log its spine because I didn't sign it. But then a few days later, I see that somebody, a newer cacher, says, "Oh, it was frozen. I didn't get it out, but I found it." And I just, whatever. Not gonna play that game, but that's okay.
Yeah, I had a similar situation, not where it was frozen, but where it was one of the really tiny, like blinker style. It wasn't a blinker, but it was one of those size containers behind a sign, and someone had shoved it way the heck up into the signpost where you couldn't get it at all. So I just wrote a note on it and said, I couldn't retrieve it. I found it, but couldn't get it out. I'll have to come back with extra tools if I actually want to get it. So the cache owner told me, yeah, go ahead and log it. That's happened a couple of times. I'll go and fix it. But in those kind of situations, you defer to the cache owner, but assume that you're not going to be able to do it. But definitely you need to post that note or whatever on it to let them know that there's an issue. Many times when it's a situation like that, though, I actually just tell the cache owner directly now through the message center, but usually just email them, hey, I ran into this problem. But always let the cache owner know that there's a problem. And most of the time, I prefer to let them know through the private messaging, not through the note. But I will put a note on the cache as well, or needs maintenance or whatever, saying, hey, there's a problem with the log, or there's a problem with the container, so that others know that I ran into a problem. But I'll put the detailed information about what the problem is in a private message so that you're not putting the spoilers on the cache page.
Yeah. And Daryl, I've done something very similar where there was a magnetic cache in a fence pole, but it was down below what I could reach. I could see it in there, but I couldn't get it out.
Yeah, that happens all too often.
I logged a need maintenance.
Yeah, well, in those kind of situations, that's part of retrieving the cache. Now, if it's a frozen cache, that's a totally different situation, and a lot of people will take issue with the, I saw it was frozen, so I'm going to log it, and I totally get that because you didn't actually find it, you didn't retrieve it, and if it's something that I can't get to, then usually I'm not going to claim it. Now, I'll sometimes go and take a photo of it, especially if it's something that I don't want to go back to. Too far away, whatever, and I'll send that to the cache owner. And keep in mind, with a new message center, you can actually send images now. Thank you very much, Groundspeak, or geocaching.com. That is a godsend. That is so awesome to be able to send those photos because that makes life so much easier. But you can send those photos and say, hey, I ran into this cache. Here's the situation. It looks like this. It's in this block of ice, and there's no way for me to get it out without damaging it. Especially with like the Tupperware kind of containers, the plastic stuff. If you start like chipping at it, you run a very high probability of cracking it if it's in the ice.
Right.
So I won't do anything with those kind of containers when they're iced over. Now, if it's an ammo can, I'll try chipping away at it.
Hack away. You're not gonna hurt
exactly. It. Well, I have actually seen those dented before. The problem is with a lot of those ammo cans, even if you do get the ammo can out, if it's frozen, I can't get the lid open until you like warm up the container because the water actually gets inside that lip and freezes it closed.
So if you happen to be visiting Shermanator in say January, and you find a cache, Daryl, would you go ahead, a frozen cache, would you go ahead and log it found? Because, well, when's the next time I'm going to get back to New York? Or
see, in that situation, what I usually do is I post a note saying I found the cache but was unable to access it or something like that, and I send the message to the CO. I wait for that CO's response before I'll change it to a found log, or I just leave it as a note saying that it was inaccessible.
Even if it was the only cache you found on your trip to New York?
You needed that state.
I'll go and get a second one just to make sure. And that's actually a good point too. Is when you're doing one of these runs where I need a cache in every state. Always make plans for backup caches.
Right.
At least one. If it's in a rest area lamppost, you're pretty sure you can get it, so you can pick like 2. But I've had some of those situations where it's like, oh, that whole rest area is currently closed. So it's always good to have at least 2 backup caches. But yeah, it's I always try to make sure that I have those backup caches, so if I run into a situation like that, it's not a problem. Plus, I'll usually try to hit those caches, so I have more than a cache in every state, and then you don't have to worry about it anyway.
Yeah.
More than a cache? Why would you want more than one cache in a state?
Because I don't like that light color on my map. I like the darker colors.
Okay. Well, we have more questions from one of the great names in geocaching, Doglius Cache. So, how do you feel about people changing out full or wet log scrolls and installing a new dry one? Personally, I love it. How do you feel about them scanning the old log scrolls and posting the images on the cache page? So,
Terminator 18, why don't you start off with that one?
Well, when he mentioned the scanning the old log, I've never seen anyone do that. And so that you do that?
I do that, yeah, but I don't do that on most of them.
Do you post it on the cache page?
On my own, yes, but not usually for someone else's cache page. But I actually, on a couple of my caches, would take the logbooks when I was done with them, and sometimes I'd actually remove the pages and scan them and put them in. But this is also, I think the last time I did it was like 6 years ago.
Oh.
So it's a very different time when you actually had people writing stories and things in the logbooks.
Yeah, that makes sense. If it's just a bunch of names, then...
Right, and if they put like the tracking number in there, usually I wouldn't post it. Because at that point, people would put the tracking number, drop this tracking number, or picked up this tracking number, so that if something went wrong, someone always had that information in the physical log. But again, this is the kind of stuff that really disappeared 7-8 years ago. I think it was that long ago now that you saw the took whatever, left whatevers on a regular basis, let alone the nice little stories that people used to write in the logs.
Uncle Daryl, tell us stories about the old days of caching.
Well, I actually got into a little bit of this kind of stuff with someone on Muncie. They messaged me, hey, I saw your name in some geocaching logs. It's like, oh, cool, blah, blah, blah. We got into a little conversation on Muncie about it. They've only been caching a year, so all they've known is, smartphone caches.
Yeah. Now,
it's totally different than it was when you and I got started, Chris.
Way back in the day.
Yeah. Well, 10 years ago was a totally different world for geocaching, and it really doesn't seem like that much has changed in the last 5 years.
Right.
As it did in the 5 years prior.
Right. When the touchscreen smartphones came out, that's really when things started changing.
Yeah. Well, we had the grandfathering of the virtual caches, the webcam caches, the elimination of the locationless caches, and then eventually we added in Earth caches, and that was all happening, about that 10-year ago mark. A little less probably, but it's we had more.
I got some locationless caches in before they were archived.
Yeah, not I. Unfortunately, I don't have any locationless caches. Hey, but at least I got a whole bunch of virtuals and a few webcams.
That's right. Well, those are still out there, so those are still possible. Now, the locationless caches are gone.
Yes.
Right.
Not a chance.
Locationless.
No.
Those were archived and just dead.
So that means the icons are still there, though, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
if you found them, then yes, the icons are there and it still counts. However, you can't log them. They're archived and locked.
Right. So new cachers can never get all the icons.
Correct. Including myself.
Oh. Wow. You're such a new cacher.
Well, but there are also the Lost and Found events.
The Lost and Found.
Yep.
Now the Block Party.
Yep, the Block Party, which are now no longer available, so there is no chance that they could have, even if it weren't for the location list.
The geocaching maze?
No, that still exists. But
they have mazes in Canada.
Outside. Yeah, you have to go outside the U.S. There's one in Canada right now, and there's another in Scotland, I think. There's one in Europe. I can't remember where it is, but it's going to be in
Back to
Europe.
The lock with you, Nessie.
Yeah, it's going to be in Europe this summer, I think. I think it's going to be in the UK for one of the mega events in the UK.
Okay.
So yeah.
I seriously debated driving up to Nova Scotia just to go to that because I wasn't around when they had those here. So
it's worth seeing once.
Yeah. Just to get the icon, I was like, oh, that's pretty far. But
I went and saw it twice, but I only have the icon once. So I have no idea how I messed that up.
There was actually one in Rochester, which is really close to me, like a few years before I started, and now I'm just like kicking myself over here because I didn't get to go.
I debated. I went to the first one here in Seattle, and I debated, do I want to pay to go into,
Yes.
I've already been into the Pacific Science Center. It'll get me an icon. Yeah, it's an icon. I'm going to go do it.
Well, and usually there were geocaching events around the launch date, so that was always worthwhile. But you know what? We're totally off the topic of scanning of logs and posting it. Here's my basic thoughts on it. If it's not your cache, I don't like removing the old log. Adding another log, if it can support it, is fine. But unless I know the cache owner, I don't like to remove the old log because they may want that. So if I know the cache owner, a lot of the times, I would swap it out and take it and give them the original, or email them, message them, whatever. Hey, I've replaced your log. I have the old one. Do you want it? But if I don't know the CO, I'm not going to do that.
Really? Okay. So I've removed wet logs out of smaller containers. They're wet because they weren't in a Ziploc bag on the inside, right? Or maybe
the Ziploc's torn or whatever.
Or it wouldn't fit. So I've taken out the old one because all that's going to do is keep moisture in the cache and replace it with another log. And then I tell the cache owner, I have the old one. If you want it, contact me. Nobody has ever contacted me.
I can definitely see that because most cache owners really don't care. Right. There are some cache owners, though, who are very insistent on it, and I've heard stories about people getting reamed for removing the old log. And some of the cache owners just really want to go through and check it out. And a lot of it used to be that, we want to check out the stories that people have written. Now it seems like it's, the auditing. They want to go back and check every name. And for something like a puzzle cache, I can see that because, you want to make sure that the person actually did it. Or if it's a very challenging cache that...
Or a challenge cache.
Yeah. So it's that kind of stuff.
Or like a gadget cache or something.
Yeah, exactly. Something where you really need to make sure that, like I've seen that where you have a red herring cache, make sure that people haven't done it. And I've seen so many of the red herring caches where someone's gone and thrown a log sheet into the red herring cache and signed it. No. Yep. You did not find it. See, right on here, it says, this is not the cache, try again. But they'll put they'll put the log sheet in and run away.
Yeah, I've seen something like that before. It was a cache that was, I guess it was under like a fence cap, but there was like a fake bottom, and then the cache was hanging under that. And somebody just took a piece of paper and put it on top of the fake bottom and said, oh, I found it. And I'm like, no, you didn't find it because here's the cache right here with the real log sheet in it.
Yeah. So, in those kind of situations, I totally get the cache owner wanting to do the audit. But, aside from that, most cache owners don't really care. It's just I don't want to take the risk of running into one of those cache owners who does care and getting yelled at for it.
Yeah.
But that's why, you provide the scans. And, I have actually
or pictures now.
Yeah, pictures, it depends on the log sheet, because sometimes the pictures aren't going to be, if you have like a nano, that picture is going to be really, really nasty to try to read.
Well, nanos are nasty to try to sign.
Yeah. So, it's up to the cache owner is my basic, I defer to the cache owner's preference on that, because it's really up to them. I think it's kind of cool, though, to see the actual scanned log sheets on the cache pages, especially on some of these caches that have been up there for, 4 or 5 years. So you can kind of see, all of these logs from
2001.
Everyone.
Back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's get into some of the features that we'd really like to see for logging, not physically logging like we've been just talking about, but the actual logging online.
You mean the cutting down of trees?
Exactly. No.
I got my chainsaw over here.
The the electronic logs, the ones that involve no trees.
Oh.
The saving of the
Save the trees.
Save the trees. Put your big logs online, not on the cache log.
Careful.
We've seen a lot of this stuff, change with the new markdowns, and we've kind of mentioned that it would be nice to have the format controls in the actual apps, and I have no doubt that we'll see that eventually, especially now that it's been simplified a bit. When it was the HTML or BB code, that got really messy. Now that it's markdown only, it's a lot easier to do the formatting in the log, so I think we're going to see these apps start rolling in the formatting, and I hope that we do, because that's going to make things easier and a lot nicer. But you know what we didn't really talk about is whether you like to live log or do field notes or something like that, and that's been a big issue previously, but doesn't seem to be such a factor anymore. We've talked about it many times on the show, where you don't want to necessarily post that you're away from home, especially when you're on a trip. So I like keeping the logs in the app, but you have to have some way to back it up, and a lot of these new apps, you don't have that option. It's either it's posted or it's in draft mode on the device. You can't store it, you can't export it to field notes or anything. And if you do like the field notes, you can't attach the photos. So I think there's a lot in that section that I'd like to see happen. Some way to save logs to geocaching.com as draft mode rather than just as a field notes. Field notes would work, but give me the option to add those images to do really the corrected coordinates would just go up anyway, so that doesn't factor into it. But some way to have, like, here's all of my logs just in draft mode, so that I can click one button or check all and post them live as soon as I get home.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a feature that I'd really like to see for safety's sake. And it's nice to have that backup so that you can run through, do quick logs on the phone, with speech to text or something like that, and then go make those edits later. Because you don't necessarily want to have to go and correct your dictation in the field as you're running to that next cache.
Right.
Because no matter how many times I've tried, there's no way to pronounce cache that the iPhone doesn't spell C-A-S-H.
I know. Well, and I have the same problem with the Android.
No, it puts the accent over the E.
Yeah.
Cache.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't do it.
Well, and this is why you'll see a lot of my logs that actually say geocache instead of just cache.
Right, exactly. That's what I have to do.
Yeah, Sherman 818, I know you have a big, long list of wishes.
Well, so I came up with a few ideas.
Which isn't hard to come up with a dream. Here's what I'd like to see. We're good at that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I think it might be nice to, I guess, tag another cacher that you're out with, like kind of on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. But then I kind of think to myself, is that making geocaching too much social media like? So maybe that's not such a good idea. But I guess Daryl's putting the profile link in there works pretty good. I've never tried that.
What I do is, I'm kind of, from the old school hypertext thing where, hypertext is awesome because I can link to all these things and then I don't make you search for them. So, that's kind of the mindset that drove me to that. Is I like to put who I'm with in my logs when I'm caching just because, it's cool and, you know who I'm out with. To me, caching is very much a social activity. So
Right.
I don't have a problem with it becoming more social media-like. And for a little while, it really seemed like Groundspeak, and still calling themselves Groundspeak at the time, wanted to make it. They wanted to do the friends list. They were talking about all the cool things that were going to happen with that. And then that progress just kind of slowed. So I don't know where that's
just disappeared.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you have these friends, but it doesn't do anything. Like you can't do anything with your friends list.
Yeah, well, there were some features that were available, like CGO, I think, still supports the,
right.
make sure that my friends don't do it stuff.
Yeah.
But, there was some support for the friends list with some beta projects and whatnot that has evaporated. So I still hope that that's going to turn into something, especially with the new advanced search that they've got. Can we have something that will pick from your friends real quick and easy? That would be a nice feature.
Yeah.
But, that's not necessarily something for logging, but, even in the logging, it would be nice to be able to just, pull up your friends list, here, these people. Or, do like the @ symbol and, start typing their caching name and it pops up. Just like social media. I do like that concept because I like to put, that kind of stuff in there. I don't think I would like to get the notices, though, every time I'm tagged in someone else's, though.
Right.
Why not? You were out with them.
Yes, but I was out with them. I don't want to do that. However, I could say, yes, every time someone says, nice spoiler at Daryl W4, I do want to know that so I can go back, find that, and kill the spoiler.
Right. I think it might be helpful because I often go caching with my boyfriend and our dog, and he always forgets to log his caches, so I have to remind him at the end of the day, like, oh, did you log all the caches we just found today? So if it notified him when I tag him, I wouldn't have to remind him all the time.
See, and I have to do the field note export so that Renee will log them. And even then, she still hasn't logged them, even though I give her the file.
Yeah, and I still have to. He's like, okay, and then I have to give him the GC number for every cache that we found. He doesn't, and he just types it on his phone and does it. So.
You know what he should do is just go to your profile and caches you found and see if he has the check mark next to the one that you just found.
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't get that in depth. I just tell him the GC number and he types the log, and that's on the end of it.
See, this is where the templates are really nice, so that okay. I found this cache, here's my template, and I'm done. I can go back and change it, but at least I've got the log in there.
Right.
Daryl, is there any app that will allow you to log as multiple people?
Yes, there are.
So.
Looking for cache is the one that comes to mind, because that one you can actually put multiple profiles in. The trouble is, if I remember, you have to live log. You can't do the field notes or anything like that. It's live log, and it's one log across all of them.
So it has to be the same text for each one.
For each, yeah.
Right.
If I remember. I could be wrong because I haven't played with that in the current version. Then GSAC does allow you to do that as well, but you have to do field notes, if I recall, to get that to work. And then you take that field note file, you can set up your templates and do it that way.
Right.
Yeah, but that's back at your computer.
Correct, and I don't like doing that. Now, maybe Project GC will come up with something like that, and I seem to recall a conversation with Magnus at some point where he said he's had some requests for that, but has not gotten into it because there's other projects that are far more interesting.
Sure.
So
right.
Maybe we'll have something coming in the not-so-distant future. But as of now, the only two that come to mind are Looking for Cache and GSAC. I don't remember for sure, but I think that GC Droid does it, And I want to say I saw that in CacheSense as well. So there's two that may be possibilities on Android, but don't quote me on it because I've never tried it, and my memory is a little bit foggy. I know that GC Droid does do the field note export, so I could be getting it confused with that's how he does it. Because, as we know, Stefan, who's the author of GC Droid, is a cacher in this area, and he's actually been over to the studio. So I talked to him about GC Droid quite a bit, including features that are not in and probably will not ever be in the actual release version. All right. So, yeah. But getting back to the templates, you've been playing with that a little bit more and had some thoughts on stuff that you wanted to see happen with that.
Right. So I've been using Cachly lately because I just switched to Apple from Android, and I wasn't going to buy the Classic app because I knew it was going away. So I got Cachly, and it lets you use templates. I've been kind of messing around. There's not a whole lot of options. So usually I just add my find count number on my log, and that's usually it. So I kind of wish there was more options for what you could use those keywords for. I know GSAC has a lot, but I'm not sure I would even use them, to be honest. Some of them are kind of out there.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things about Geosphere and why I'm stuck using it, is that it does have a lot of that stuff, that the keywords and whatnot that I don't even understand.
Right.
I had to have some help putting together my templates, and I haven't touched them really since then. I just take them and tweak them, and you can get all kinds of great stuff. Like, this is my find number blah of the day, and you can even do some logic statements in Geosphere. Sorry.
Blah, 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 blah.
Some logic statements where I have, if it's the first find of the day, then it puts in first find of the day. If not, it says this is find number blah of the day. Mm-hmm. So I have whole little sentences that are changed around based on the number of caches that I found. And that is really cool, but it is so tough to put that kind of stuff together that it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do. I'm thrilled that it does it, and I really want to have it, but from a development aspect, I don't know if it really makes sense. But the only way that I like having that is when you have those multiple templates where I can pick it. And the way that Geosphere works, to me, is ideal, because I have full logs that have all of my links, they have all of this logic built in, and at the same time I have just little code snippet kind of things, little text things that you hit it and it drops in just that cacher's name and nothing else. So that I can go through, I can do my voice dictation and then highlight, drop, done. It's that kind of stuff that I really like, and no one else seems to have that on mobile. Cachly does some really cool stuff with the templating. CacheSense does a lot of really cool stuff with the templating as well, but they just don't seem to have the flexibility that I have with Geosphere. So I really want to see more Geosphere-like templating, and it certainly could be done much easier because there is no reference in the app for what those keywords are for the substitutions.
Right. Yeah, Cachly only lets you have one template at a time, as far as I understand right now. I don't know if they're planning on changing that. I think it would be really nice. And you also have to select a default log type. So if you end up DNFing a cache, is that a verb? Did I just make that a verb? Is that okay?
We've used that as a verb before too.
Okay. But if you don't find one, then you have to go back in and select the log type because it automatically selects found. So it would be nice to have maybe a separate template for if you don't find a cache versus you found it, and then maybe a couple other separate logs for finds.
Absolutely, and that's one thing I'd love to see in something as well with Geosphere doesn't do it, but have a default log option. Not that it has to use it, but have that default log option So if you want to make a quick find, just hit found it or didn't find it, it's going to default to having this big block of text, but then you can go in and change it to whatever else you want if you want to do that. And again, that's just to make it quick and easy for people like Renee, or your boyfriend, Sherman, who don't want to go and log.
Right.
Make it easy enough for someone to put a decent log in. Just even, hey, thanks for my 200th find.
Right.
Nice. Doc Firewoman, I was just about to say that we're not getting anything in the live Q&A, but Doc Firewoman just posted a question to you, Shermanator18.
Oh boy.
Have you thought about requesting that from the Cachly developer?
I actually talked to him a lot. I might have mentioned it already, but if I haven't already, I definitely will, because I'm sure he usually takes a lot of input from all the cachers that are using his app. He's usually pretty good about it, so I'll definitely mention it to him.
Yeah, Cachly is very responsive. It's a new app. He is very responsive. I sent him a quick email about some problems with one of the new releases of Cachly. When I was testing it, it came across some quick bugs, and it was like same day he was back to me with it. I still want to sit down and put together a list of here's the features that I need to really start using this app and to even recommend Cachly as like the go-to app. And I just can't get to it because every time I start going through and building this list, he comes out with a new version that's addressed like one or two of those issues.
Yeah.
Doc Firewoman said she asked him to do some things with trackables, and he was very open. And yeah, he's definitely building that laundry list of things that people want in there, but don't expect to see them right away because a lot of it is intense code work that he's not going to be able to do in like a weekend.
Right. I think right away, soon after it came out, I messaged him about some things like separate logs for caches you own. He didn't have those options, and like right away, a few days later, he had that all implemented and everything. So he's really fast. So if you have a suggestion, just email him or tweet him or whatever. He's pretty good about it.
Nice.
All right, well, we're running a little bit long, but we do have a couple more items here that you would requested, so let's try to get through those.
Right. So one other thing I think about a lot is I wish you could edit your logs within an app instead of having to go back around through the website and clicking all these tabs and buttons. I wish you could just like select your log on an app and go back and change the word you misspelled or whatever.
Now, this is one of the reasons why, when I was talking before, I like having the logs saved in the app and not posted right away, because in most of the apps, if they even support it, I can go back and make those edits. So I don't like to post my logs right away, not just because I don't want people to know that I'm here, which, I periscope a lot from caches anyway, so they already know I'm there. But not just for that, but I like it more for that safety factor, because I can go back. When I stop at the rest area, when I stop for lunch, I just go through my logs. Oh, hey, I need to make this tweak, or this sentence doesn't sound right, and it gives me a chance to do that before I post them online. But as soon as I post them online, I just kind of they're written in stone. I don't ever edit them again.
Yeah.
Chris, what do you do for any changes or stuff? Do you do it when you write the log, or?
No, I usually go back to my desktop and edit then.
So you're doing like field notes, or are you editing on the website?
I post live. Just today I looked at I did a cache, did text-to-speech as I was walking away. When I got back to my desk, this was at lunchtime, I open up the geocaching website. It shows me my recent cache I looked at. I go to it and edit the log, and sure enough, I had missed a spot where it did CASH instead of CACHE. Another thing, then I'll do a little editing here and there, but I don't know. If I do text to speech, I work hard to make sure it's right before I send it. I will type it out and know that it's correct.
Yeah, well, and one of the reasons why I don't like doing the live posting a lot of the time is I'll go and mark a cache found and move on. It's time to get to the next cache, and then I'll finish up the log later. Or I use just like quick basic template, and then I'll put more information in. So that's why I don't like the live logging, is because I do take the time. After I found the cache, I don't like doing all of my logging right in the field.
Yeah. Now I have this year been trying to write better logs. No TFTC anywhere in the log. So in doing so, it's taking me a lot longer to write a log, and it depends on my mood. Sometimes I'm like, I just don't want to do it. I just want to go find the cache and move on. So I'll come back and I'll log it later. So I've got some caches that are coming up now in 2 or 3 weeks, and I found that I haven't logged yet because, well, I've made a commitment to myself to write better logs, and so that means I'm actually not logging the caches I find. Wait a minute. Something's not right here.
So you're not writing a log at all.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, UDAC says, I'm picky and will correct a log if there's a typo days, weeks, months, years later. And that actually reminds me, I just actually went and changed a log on one of my caches that had a bunch of HTML, or well, actually it was BB code, but a bunch of links in it, because it's actually very pertinent to the cache, and one of them was like a link to the checker at project-GC. So that kind of stuff, I will go back years later and go and correct.
Right.
And if you're not on a computer, doing that is really a pain in the butt, so it would be nice to have access from a native interface. Now, that's not really to say that you couldn't do a responsive design on the geocaching.com website that would work better. And I think that would be my preference, just because then it's accessible on any device and everything. You don't have to necessarily use an app. You could use the computer at the library or your buddy's tablet or whatever. It doesn't really matter.
Or even just make the website more mobile friendly. I don't feel like it's very...
Exactly. Yeah, that's where I was getting at with the responsive, is make it better fit the multiple devices.
Right.
And they did seem to get into some of the mobile optimization for a while, but mobile optimization and responsive are very different things. And I prefer the responsive to the mobile, because then, responsive, you're supposed to keep everything, and not everyone does, but you're supposed to keep all the features there. And when they do the mobile optimize, they tend to take some of the features out. And if you're taking the features out, then what's the point?
Yeah.
All right, and then you also had something about dates on the log?
Right. So a lot of times, like I said, my boyfriend tends to forget to log caches, and if I remind him a day later, he can't log them on his phone because the date is going to be today's date. So I think it would be nice. I don't know if other apps do this, but Cachely does, I think. But to be able to backdate your log on an app would be nice.
Almost all of the apps that I remember logging with do support changing the date. Some even do the time. And to me, the time is a big deal, because I'm not submitting my logs until the end of the day or whatever. And every so often you'll find that you missed one of those caches in between. So by changing the date and time, you get it into the right order. And I like to have my logs submitted in the right order.
I didn't even think about that.
You know what? I know that's like really, really picky. But to me, I like having my logs in order. It's that story of my caching day. Not to mention, if you do hit a milestone, and yes, I've hit milestones and not even realized it. So, if you're doing that, it's nice to have that so that it shows up correct on the milestones list.
Right.
But Doc Firewoman says, yes, 1,000 times yes, be able to change the date.
Yeah. And I know the intro app, at least right now, doesn't let you change the date.
The what app? I don't know.
I mean, the free geocaching
Geocaching, yes.
thing.
Geocaching.
The GeoCachinger app is still meant, I think, for the more casual cache finder.
Yes.
Even though they called it the premium member app or whatever.
Well,
an app for
you
premium
get the
members.
premium. Yeah, it's an app for premium members because you get all of the features if you're a premium member. Not because you're a premium cacher.
Gotcha.
You're a premium member. See, distinctions.
Okay.
It still beeps when you get near a cache. Ta-da! Turn that off.
The thing that I want most right now from that app is more settings so I can turn stuff off.
Right.
Yes.
Because I've also noticed that if you log out and log back in, those videos keep popping up every time you click a new cache.
They do.
Yep. Doc Firewoman says the intro app or the GeoCachinger app isn't meant for me at all, but I've griped enough about that. Well,
Yeah.
and this is why there are so many other apps out there. Is geocaching is not a one-size-fits-all hobby. You do need to have all of these other apps. You know, there's people who want all of the great templating that I use on like Geosphere, and there's people who want something more simple. They want something a little bit more specific. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that people want and need, and not one app is going to handle all of that.
Right.
What?
Nope, it won't.
But I think they've really gotten the point at this point, because before it was the GeoCachinger app, the ratings for the intro app were pretty high. And now if you look at the rating on the App Store, it's quite low. And all these reviews about how, what people don't like about it and all this stuff. It's kind of fun to read if you go in and just look at the reviews.
Yeah, people were much more forgiving when it was called Intro. Now that it is the only app, people are not so forgiving about it. And I don't think that they should be necessarily forgiving, but it is still a work in progress. It's just, I think they made the switch a little bit too early.
Right. Like I think I was actually tweeting with their official account, and they said, "Oh, it's we're not done with it yet." I'm like, "So you just admitted that you put out an app that's not finished?" And they're like,
sure.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, they even said that they finally hit the point where they feel it is a full-featured app, but here's all the stuff that we have coming, including things like the offline list, which I believe they said was the next thing on the agenda was to get the offline list.
Next week, apparently.
Yeah. So
Which
hopefully.
Pocket queries.
I don't know that they're going to be pocket queries.
Well, that's what the current lists are.
Exactly, but here's what I wonder. Are they going to be working in the apps at least to phase out the pocket queries because they want to make the changes to pocket queries to use the new search engine ultimately?
Right.
So, I don't know that it's going to be pocket queries. I don't know that it isn't going to be pocket queries, but it's one of those.
What do you mean you don't know, Daryl? You know everything.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
We'll probably get a better idea when we talk with Nate in a few months, or a few weeks. But yeah, it's one of those. I'm curious to see what they do just to kind of get some kind of hint at what might be happening. I hope that the pocket queries get updated, not go away.
Right.
If that's the case, then I think we'll see pocket queries in the current app.
Well, on the
Cachinger app.
geocaching.com website, there is a list, but those are not the same lists that's in the app.
And I want access to those bookmark lists.
Yeah.
That's something that not all of the apps support, but it really needs to be in my apps because that's where I do, like, here are the caches I'm going to hit along my route. Now, you can always go back and do the pocket queries because the bookmark lists are for premium members only anyway. So it's not like you can't do a pocket query if you have the access to the lists.
Right.
But I need to have those lists. And one of the big problems with the access currently is that you can't get to the public lists from almost any of the apps that I've seen.
Right. You can only get your own.
All right, so we've been talking for over an hour yet again, so I think we better cut this off now, and I'm sure we'll do yet another logging show, and we're probably going to have a lot more on the intro app that is now the Geocaching app.
Geocaching
even after we talk with Nate from geocaching.com. But, Shermanator18, why don't you give us a little bit more on where people can find you?
Sure. I'm on Twitter. It's my Twitter handle is GeoSherms18 because Shermanator18 was already taken.
What?
Yeah, and it's really funny because real quick, I do the U.S. geocaching hour, and I guess somebody put at Shermanator18, and then everyone was responding, and it wasn't me, so it was just going to this random person that has no idea what we're talking about.
You know, you hear those stories all the time.
Yeah. I also have a blog. It's Shermanator18.wordpress.com. I write on there occasionally. I'm not very consistent, but sometimes I write on there, so that's where you can find me.
You mean you're not blogging 24/7 as well?
No, not 24/7.
Oh, well.
23/6?
Not quite that either.
Okay.
Maybe like once a week if I'm really good about it.
So if we start pestering you on Twitter, will you start blogging more often?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So there we go.
Send all your complaints to @Shermanator18 on Twitter.
Exactly.
Or to just Shermanator18. We'll see if we can get Shermanator18 to start blogging more often. In the meantime, time is running out to enter question 222. And that's going to be a drawing for the 365-day membership to project-gc.com. Well, question 222, if you don't remember, is about working with law enforcement agencies, since we're going to be talking about that with Rock Chalk in just 2 weeks. Send an email to geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com with the title of question 222 in the body, and make sure to include your geocaching.com screen name with the story about working with law enforcement. Now, that's a great training event maybe that was held by a local caching community, something like a cool geocache at the cache station, or maybe it was even like a bomb scare that turned into something, not so bad. But that's all it takes to get entered into the drawing is some story like that. And there is a way still to get a bonus entry, because we're going to be doing that all year, just like we've been doing previously. And that's if you record it in your own voice, you'll get a second entry. Not just the one, but the second entry into the drawing. And right now we have no one, so you have an even better chance of getting that 365 membership to Project-GC. Now, of course, you can record that audio file and send it in the email to geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com. But if you'd rather just place a phone call and use the voicemail line, that's 206-350-3647. Now, your deadline to have those entries in is March 29th at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, or that's 6 p.m. Pacific, or 1 a.m. on March 30th if you want to go UTC.
Nice. Now, I tell you that Daryl does a great job scheduling these shows. And he does. So, next week, March 24th, we are doing one of our randomized show. This is XLive. That means we used to... It was live. No. I like Roman numerals. They're fun. We will have Michael Miller of Cache and Release. March 31st, we're doing show 222. That's the law enforcement agencies with Rock Chalk. We just talked about that. Get your voicemail in, get an extra entry, get a good chance to win that whole year-long Project GC code. That's valuable. April 7th, guess what we're talking about? We're talking about the GeoCaching app with Nate Irish. I have to say that today because, well, it's St. Patty's Day, the day we're recording. April 14th is, look at this, none other than project-gc.com with the developer Magnus. Some great shows lined up, folks. Get your questions in for show 222 and get a chance to win that Project GC subscription. And then, just 2 weeks later, by the time you're finally trying to figure it out, we'll have Magnus on to talk more about project-gc.com.
Check the Cashmaniacs website at cashmaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearhead shows, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads@cashmaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cashmaniacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cashmaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Steffenauer and Daryl Wanberg. This show is copyright 2016 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with the Cashmaniacs.